Hello and welcome to Gatekeepers. This is an early night for us, starting at 7 p.m. Central Time. Some of our members have things they need to take care of later tonight, so we are starting a bit early, and I apologize for not notifying the public sooner. Tonight's episode is going to be maintaining players. And in that, when games get boring, they typically end. The one problematic killer to all games is boredom. It doesn't matter if it's an RPG, if it's a board game, or even a video game. If the game is boring, players aren't engaged. So how do we avoid that? Joining me tonight is MarHawkman. Hello.
Good evening.
I also have with me Shadow from Shadow and Sun.
Howdy, folks.
The Crafting Gamer.
Evening.
And Conall the Cigar DM.
Howdy.
And I am your host. If you haven't already considered doing so, please consider subscribing to this channel and the other channels linked in the video description below. If you really enjoyed tonight's content, make sure to hit the subscribe button as it helps all the channels grow, and hit the like button if you really liked tonight's content. I'm stumbling over my words. I apologize.
Put down the
regular.
alcohol.
Yeah, well, there we go. Okay. So, how is everyone this evening?
Epic.
Doing pretty good.
You got nerdy ogre in the chat.
What's up, nerdy?
I'm
Greetings.
just here. Was that a line? Human lollipop? No, human. I don't know. The line from Fifth Element.
Hey, there's.
I am a human popsicle.
I am. Yes, I am a human.
Yes, yes.
Meat.
Hey, there's Scott Clark in the chat.
Oh, right,
How you
right.
doing?
Yeah.
All right. Let's see here. I am all sorts of out of sorts today. You get the banners going. There we go.
I didn't even know today was a Wednesday, and I'm like, oh wait, crap. What happened? To
I mean,
wait.
it happens. It comes up on you pretty quick, especially if you're working overtime like this guy. 10-hour days. Yikes. But, that's not the worst days. I do know there are people who pull 12 to 14 and even 16-hour days, which is beyond my comprehension. So.
It's called crystal meth.
So, as I said at the top of the night, boredom is the ultimate game killer. And hopefully tonight we will be able to offer some of our tips and tricks of what we do to keep players involved at the table. And if you in the chat have specific questions about this topic or related topic, be sure to leave that in the comments and I will give it a shout out and read. So let's set the right tone for the evening. Let's tell the audience one thing, maybe more, in the hobby that bores you the most. What is the one thing you find boring, disengaging, or annoying when you are at the table as a player, not a game master? I'm going to start with Mar.
When someone is literally just reading a module, and you can like feel it in their voice as they go from sentence to sentence, literally just reading things off a card. It's one of those things where it doesn't bore me immediately, but after a while, it's just like, okay, now we get to the next part in the novel we're acting out.
Yeah. Okay. What about you, Conall? What is the thing you find most boring or disengaging or even annoying at a table as a player?
Over dramatic RPGing.
Really? Okay. Can you elaborate?
You got one cat who wants to be the prima donna of the ball. Not forgetting that there is other people here that would like to have their turn or their moment underneath the limelight, but finds a way to put himself in every situation. No one can roll better than he can. No one can RP better than he can. type personalities. I know this game takes all kinds. I realize that, but if you get somebody that is overly dramatic, just drives me up the damn wall, and I'm always ready to leave.
You mean like the LARPer type, thespians, or do you
No,
just mean the limelight hogs, the game hogs?
the person who wants to be, as I said, the person who wants to be part of everything. The thief can't go be thieving.
Oh, you mean like that the person who tries to do actions when someone else is in the middle of their turn to do something?
Right, and just hams it up. I mean, I
Spotlight
get
hog.
that. I get how some people like to RP their character. They want to use a strange new accent to talk to like the way the character talks. I get it. I do it. But at the same time, when my turn is over, I let the next guy have his next 15 minutes underneath the spotlight, and it's the fastest way for me to get tired of a table if there is that atmosphere at the table.
Okay.
I just thought of an amusing story from yesterday, actually, about that. But I could save that for later if you guys are...
Okay. We'll save that for a moment. Crafting, how about you? What do you find disengaging, boring, or even annoying as a player?
Campaign hopping. I had a group. Now this is a twofold because when you remember correctly, you had a similar question as a GM. I find both as GM and a player that absolutely boring because I had a group for the longest time. Well, we play this for 3 sessions, then we get bored. Let's play the next one for 3 sessions, then get bored. Let's play the next one for 3 sessions, then get bored. It's like, come on, guys. As both player and GM, I get nothing out of this. I am so bored with doing that.
Okay.
Crafting, might I suggest a better caliber of players? People who right off the bat in the social contract say, I want to be playing the same character for 6 years minimum. Sign it in blood, notarize it, you're good to go.
Blood's a formality.
There's other things, but I would go with blood.
I haven't played with that group in close to a decade, so.
All right. What about you, Shadow? What is the most boring, disengaging, or even sometimes annoying thing that you find at a table as a player?
Edition wars, rules lawyers, and people who want to talk about the mechanics more than the story. I don't care. If all we did was flip a freaking coin for everything, I'd be okay with that. Every decision, flip a coin. Heads you win, tails you lose. Kind of thing. I don't care. I just want that's why I like Amber, the Dice role-playing game, because there are actual rules, and don't give me that crap that if you don't have dice, you're not playing a game. I can mention like half a dozen different games that we've been playing for centuries that don't use dice. Yeah, I know you like the math rocks. I like math rocks too, but I'm not going to get into an argument over which die is better, or which set of dice is better. Any of that crap. Let's get to the action and the story. I don't even need to roll dice. You've seen me, Jade. Go ahead and roll my dice for me on the thing. And you know what? I trust the apps. And you know that if I let somebody else roll for me, especially you, I'm going to do great, aren't I?
Yeah. Okay? You've got some amazing luck.
I have total faith in the universe and the story that we're trying to craft here at the table. I'm good with whatever you give me. I was playing. I play every Sunday with Rick in 28 millimeters show, and you can ask him. Like the first time I hit the die rolling app every night, I'm like in Traveler rolling an 11 or a 12 is like critical success. Boom, first time. That's what I'm gonna get, and it's always like monumental because in games like that are heavy on the role playing, one die roll might be all you get in a 2-hour period, but you better make it count. And boy, does it seem to, work out in my favor. Hope I'm not jinxing it. But yeah, those are the things that bug the crap out of me. Let's just get to playing.
Right.
How about you, Dave?
Oh, me? The things I find the most boring at tables, or even disengaging, is And I am partially guilty of it, especially when it's not my scene. If I am not in the scene at all, I will pull out my phone and read through emails. I'll read through chats. I'll check my Discord because I'm in a bunch of different communities. I'm constantly talking with people about gaming elsewhere. So I'm even checking the ICRPG forums, checking to see if there's questions people have about certain content. So the most disengaging thing to me is people pulling out their phone or on their laptop, playing all their games. Now, the counter to this is saying, hey, put your phone down and pay attention to the game. And if I'm annoying my DM and they say, hey, put your phone down, dude, get ready for your turn's coming up. You need to be aware of what's going on. I'm like, yeah, sure. No, I'll put my phone away. It goes away. I'll even put it in the backpack behind me somewhere. Like I said, I am guilty of it. But the ones that drive me absolutely nuts are the players who sit there between turns playing with their phones, not paying attention to what's going on. Even if they're, if the party's in a battle, they're just like doop, 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 looking away, doing other things. Then when it gets to their turn, like, okay, what's going on? And I'm like even with me checking my messages and whatnot, I am aware of what's going on in the game. Like I'm keeping part of my mind focused on the game so that I am engaged in what's going on. So I don't have to ask, hey, what's going on? I already know. But the players who are completely out there in center field, not paying attention, don't know what's going on because they're on their phone, those are the ones that I'm just like, why are you here? Like, if you would rather be painting, so I'm one of those ADHD type people that I have to be doing something else with my hands. Otherwise, I can't focus. Like, even when I'm, at my office at work, I'm listening to an audiobook. I'm listening to music. While I'm working, I can concentrate on both things at the same time, especially like an engaging story. I can keep my entertainment mind focused on that while I'm focused on work doing my thing. Because my work, what I do for work is I draw pictures that people build things from. It's just how my mind works. I've always had this ability to draw or do something while focusing on audio. Drove my physics teacher absolutely bonkers because she thought I was always goofing off and cheating and whatnot on tests because I was able to ace the tests, but during her lectures I was sketching constantly, and she was absolutely outraged at it all the time. So people painting.
The tip for you GMs out there: if you've got an artist in the group, let them art.
Yep.
Let them do it. There are some games out there that actually give an award bonuses and XP and things like that. If the players are sitting there doing a courtroom sketch of what's going on, they're getting a bonus. Do not squash those artists while they're at your table. I had a guy, I kid you not, every Friday night we play. Every Friday afternoon, he would hit up a comic book store, show up at my place with a stack of comics, and start reading while we're playing. Don't do that. Don't be that guy. Sorry, Chucky, wherever you are. No.
I'm in kind of the same boat you're at when it comes to that, Mike. I have to have something else going. I'm pretty good at paying attention to the conversation, gaming otherwise. But if I'm doing something on my phone, don't think I'm not paying attention. I'm making sure I am focusing on what needs to be focusing, just trying to keep my ADD at bay. That's
Sure.
kind of why I prefer miniatures and maps over theater of the mind, because maps and figures just give me that one more extra anchor to concentrate on so I don't disappear into my thoughts.
Yeah, it's like
so. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that it's like another thing that the like sketching angle is like actually drawing a map as you play the game. Don't just like throw a map on the board and then like, oh, this is the area we're in. It's just like draw things on the map as you explore.
Mhm.
yeah, Bruce's hex maps are very good at that. He draws, he draws what.
No, he means make a player draw the map. Because
Oh,
once I erase it as the DM, I'm not telling you how to get back.
uh,
Okay, you better
yeah,
have a map. That's the way it was in the old days. If you didn't have a map and you didn't keep track, I'm not redrawing the map and rolling it, running you through while I keep quickly redraw the map to find your way back out after you've cleared the dungeon. You better have a map, and I better be able to look at it and go, yeah, okay, you're good.
yeah. That would have screwed me over in so many different campaigns. Half the time, the only
mean-
person I trust can draw a map often was the DM.
Find another.
I mean, not everyone's a cartographer, but I see your point there,
You got freaking graph paper, for Christ's sake.
right?
You know?
So
And it's drawn on a grid with giant graph paper.
Right, left,
Now,
left, right, left,
we've
right.
we've kind of already wandered into the field of offering a counter to the thing that bores or disengages us from the game. I offered the counter of as far as the phones go, asking the person, hey, what's going on, do you need to take a break, like, or maybe even making it their turn sooner is the counter to that. Is I noticed the person's playing with their phone, I'm like, hey, you know what, your turn's coming up, what are you doing? So what kind of counters do you have for the thing that annoys you? I'm going to start with Mar on this one again.
Well, one of them is to talk with the players while describing the scene, because in a lot of cases, what you're actually describing is a player is looking at a thing, and you're not just reading out of the book. You're discussing the specific part of it that the player is currently looking at, not just the big picture. And
Okay.
to a certain extent, this kind of sort of encourages a bit of improvisation, because the book might not have all of the details that the player is prompting you for, but it's just one of those things. It's like you're trying to make it fit what the players are doing, not just being the bland block of text.
Okay. What about you, Conall? How do you counter your pet peeve?
I call for a bio break. I cut them off.
Okay. So instead of a person going on like hogging the spotlight, you call for a bio break.
I take for a bio break. I take the steam right out of their sails. Because I've tried to say stuff before in the past, and I get, well, I'm just role playing my character, or I'm just doing what's natural. So if you unplug his ass from the wall and he's left there wibbling in the air because everybody else has now left the table to go get a snack or drink, he's not getting the everybody's looking at me attention, and they normally knock it off for a while.
No, Max would say he. Max would say you're right in saying he.
Unless it's plural.
Well, no, even
to be
with
fair, I haven't ran into that problem when it comes to women as of yet. So it's when it comes to children, you just say, "Hey, okay, you've had your turn." But when it comes to adults, I fucking unplug them from the wall.
Yeah, Scott's got it. Scott's got it right here. Because this has happened at his table before. He will tell that player, "Hey, you're on pause for the other players. I'll circle back to you when it's your turn."
Reasonable players that makes a great deal of sense.
Timer isn't a bad idea either. Getting a stand timer, or you got 5 minutes, wrap it up. Dave Chappelle had that wrap it up music. You guys remember that little skit he did where you click the button and you get the music, like at the awards ceremony when they hit the music, it's time for you to toddle off the stage.
No, but that doesn't really mean much. I mean, there was a lot of David Chappelle stuff I try to forget.
Hey, Grandma.
Yep, Granny just joined us. So, what about you, Crafting? How do you counter the annoyance that you have? Like, what is the natural counter to that?
That was. It ended up.
I wasn't taking notes.
It ended up being a almost and not no almost
No, that's
didn't
right.
happen.
Campaign
because-
jumping.
Yeah, it almost didn't happen simply because I was at scream my words up. Sorry. Oh yeah, I was at the end of what was basically my first 10 years of GMing because the party broke up. But I did get them to last 6 campaigns by adding, unfortunately, video game tropes or little video game stories that everybody knew. I didn't like doing it because I like to be original, but it kept their attention. So it was the longest for a single campaign we ever had gone. And then, of course, everything happened and we broke up, which ended up being for the best because now that I'm older, I realize gaming with them wasn't that fun with all that damn game hopping, and I couldn't seem to get it to really stop.
You know, I don't have a problem with
TCG, then you met us.
I don't
Yes,
really
that is
have a
true.
problem bringing outside tropes. I have a campaign I'm running right now for a group of friends, and one of them is basically playing a dwarf like off of Lord of the Rings, you know, that version of dwarf, and he's trying to find his lost kingdom. God, where have I heard this story before? And I'm like, all right, well, if he wants to do this way, I'm gonna, as part of a treasure, I'm gonna put Heart of the Stone and Heart of the Mountain in one of the treasures. That's like the top piece for the something of rulers, or anyways, it's going to be a magical art. Yeah. So and they seem to like it, or he seemed to like it. So sometimes throwing outside tropes from movies, as long as it fits, I don't really have a problem with the concept of it. Yeah, Scott. That's what I'm talking
Arkenstone.
about. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Tolkien. My wife and I just watched that movie. I think it was 2 days ago now.
As long as I don't have to read the book again anytime in the near future.
What's wrong with the Hobbit?
I mean, as long as you don't get to, it's a privilege and an honor.
No.
So, what about you, Shadow? What is the natural counter that you would offer for your biggest annoyance or pet peeve at the table?
It's really simple. When you get to the table, I allow for, you know, how you doings, you know, what's new, how you guys doing, you know, that sort of thing. You guys want to talk about game mechanics and things like that, we're going to do that after the game. That way it's relevant and maybe actually might be helpful as opposed to, you know, interrupting. And, you know, sometimes people will try to, you know, well, I like this rule. Maybe we can start, you know, we're not using that rule. Especially if you're bringing it up before the game, because that means you've been thinking about it and you want to use that to your advantage when we are clearly using the rules written in this particular book that we're actually playing. If that rule's in the game and, you know, maybe the GM's, you know, unaware of it or neglecting it, that's, again, still his choice. After the fact, you can bring it up and show how it may have affected things differently, and then maybe. But if you try to do it beforehand, it seems like you're trying to, you know, manipulate the impending situation. So keep your friendly talk at the beginning before the game. You know, your friends at the table, I'm assuming. You know, if you don't give a rat's about your friends, how they've been doing, find the table where that is the case. After the game, talk about the other stuff. That allows the people like me to go, sorry guys, I got another engagement. I got to get up early in the morning. I'll see you guys later. Thanks for the game. See you next week.
And of course, the natural counter to my biggest pet peeve of you know, devices at the table taking away from people's attention is to, well, have a random encounter, suck them in. Have something that their characters care about, or even the player character or the player cares about. Have it in jeopardy. If a player character is just sitting there, or if a player is just sitting there goofing off on his phone, they get a missive from their hometown that their character's mother is suddenly ill and they need to come now before it's too late because they're on their deathbed. Or if the player doesn't care about familial connections in the game, take something that they do value away, especially like when the party's asleep. Like, oh hey, you know that prized sword you have? You wake up in the evening, or you wake up in the morning to start your watch, and you notice that sword's missing, and the last person on watch, well, they fell asleep tending the fire. Something like that, like directly engage them. Don't leave it for chance. Directly engage. So thinking about directly engaging with players, actually, do you ever ask players for feedback? And when, if you do, when do you do so, and how often? For this one, I'm going to start with Shadow. Do you ever ask your players for feedback?
Nah, I don't give a shit. No, of course. After the game, I suppose you could do it before the game, if you didn't get the chance to do it after the game. But, a lot of referees I know right now, that's a big thing. After the game, Bruce is famous for doing it. Did you guys have fun? Any feedback before, I don't see it for a week kind of thing. That's a great way to, as a GM and as players, to air grievances, let the GM know what you would like, what you didn't like, so that maybe they'll think about it twice the next time they're tempted to use that sort of thing. In the old days, I would literally be on the phone with my players like almost every day with every player if we weren't going to play for a couple of days. Otherwise, I'd see him the next night. But I had this one player, I kid you not, he would call me every freaking day with a crap ton of questions and stuff. Even when he moved off to San Francisco, which at the time was a couple hundred miles away from where I live, he would call me every day from college, wanting advice on how to run the game that he was running up there. So staying in touch with your players or your referee, it's absolutely crucial if you want to have the best game you can have. Otherwise, you're probably coming across as just a tourist, someone who's just there for the beer and pretzels.
What about you, Crafting? Do you ever ask your players for feedback about the game?
Yes, especially since when I first started, I was, as a GM, I hadn't even played before. I was just kind of thrown into the world of the GM because the guy who taught me was tired of being a player and he's seen my potential as a GM. I kind of regret that. I feel a little used now that I'm an adult, but at any rate, asking for feedback was a constant, and it still is, especially if you have like a new group. You got to know what they liked and disliked. If you don't have the courage to ask them where you went wrong, you could easily lose the group. Of course, you also know where you went right too.
So when do you normally ask your players? Like at what point?
When it's a new group, I'll ask them at the end of each session. After a while, I'll start making it once every 4 or 5 sessions.
Okay.
And I've never had to go beyond that. Once again, my experience is mostly with mini campaigns. So.
Okay. What about you, Conall? Do you ever ask your players, for feedback and whatnot?
More often than I really want to. Working out of a shop, I'm always, you're as good as your last game. So I'm always asking the players after the end of the night's session, do they have fun? What would they have done differently, other than, bad dice rolls being bad dice rolls? Are you interested in coming back? If so, do you want to play the same type of character? Do you want to try something new? And stuff like that. I'm constantly asking for feedback from when I'm at the shop. When it's a house game or internet game, as the case may be, with people I know or that are, like Finn and a few other people we both know, I maybe ask maybe once a month, what did they think of the game? But it's not as often as it is in the shop.
Okay. And finally, Mar, how do you engage with your players as far as feedback goes?
Well, it depends on the kind of feedback I'm actually collecting. So it's like sometimes, I might actually, in the middle of a game, it's like just when I'm explaining things, sometimes I just get distracted in mid-explanation and realize later that I left something out. Like all of the videos that I've posted to YouTube where I'm talking about a subject, I go back, I rewatch the video, and at some point in the video, I will be like, oh, I was going to say this, and I completely forgot when I recorded the video, and then I uploaded it without it. And I do that when I'm talking to people in person at a table, too, sometimes. And if I'm explaining something to people, it's like I will quite often just ask them if they feel that they understood what I just said. Because if they didn't, well, I might need to explain it again.
Okay.
But yeah, it's like at the end of a session, yeah, sure. Just like, what did you like? What did you dislike? That sort of thing too. It's, maybe they didn't have the same opinion of the topic that I did. And maybe they, had a drastically different take on where they thought the plot should have gone. That sort of thing always exists. Like, am I necessarily going to change it just because they didn't like it? Not all necessarily, but it's nice to know that they felt a certain way.
And one of the things I always do at the end of almost every session, sometimes I forget to ask, but I'll address my players. I'd be like, hey guys, any questions, comments, concerns, anything you want to see happening in the future. And in an ICRPG, this is actually called Tribunal. It's actually mentioned in the core book of, hey, have a tribunal with your players at the end of a session. Just to gauge like where they are as players and their characters are and where you are as the game master. Ask them directly, hey, what did you like? What did you not like? Do you have any hopes or dreams for the next sessions or anything you're looking for? I typically also handle this at session 0 or the opening session. Like, hey, tell me about your character. What are their likes? What are their hopes? What are the things they want to accomplish in life? Do they want to go slay a dragon? Do they want to go marry the princess of the land? Give me something that you want your character to do. And that can be session by session. That can be opening session. Like, hey, here's the idea I have for my character. This is the direction that they want to go. I'd be like, yeah, let's do it. Let's go for it. I will craft the campaign as we go, and I will try to fit in your character's hopes and dreams, because those goals are what the character wants to achieve in their lifetime. So that's something they're going to want to work forward to. So that's something I always try to do, comments, questions, concerns at the end of every session. Yep, it's got my players tend to be pretty vocal in their plans. Yep, being one of those players, again, thank God I'm at your table again. I've voiced my plan kind of early. I'm not planning my character as far as like what I take at what level. I don't care about that anymore. Like, I'm getting that crap out of my mind.
Whoa. You don't have a
I'm not
sheet?
planning. I have a spreadsheet. I have a spreadsheet to do all the other math and whatnot. I don't want to have to, I just want to roll a die and add a number. I don't want to have to go, well, do I add this and then this, then this and this? No. I roll a die. I add one number, done. I succeed or pass or fail, whatever. But I'm not planning out my builds to like level 40 or anything. My current build is planned to level 4. Guess what? We're level 4. So I'm planning the life of the character out more than the job of the character. The character has a family. The character wants to get back to his family. That is his goal. He's currently in another realm, an entirely another world. His goal is now to succeed at his mission and get back to his family. That's his goal. And I will continue to have the character work towards that goal. So,
I mean, me personally, when I'm creating a character and like actually like thinking out like a character's persona, I guess you could say, like I will often just like look at the like, okay, what kind of approach does this character like taking to combat? And then go from there when making skill choices later on down the road, and not, try to like plan everything, but I have an idea in mind of what I want to do, even if it's not necessarily like fully formed, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm. So well, go ahead.
Well, like for one example, in a 5e game once, I played a I think it's called the Sorcerer, one of the like Warlock. It's like a magic user type character who apparently most of the 5e crowd thinks that all Warlocks should have Eldritch Blast as their starting ability because it's like the best in the game, and a lot of Warlock builds just spam Eldritch Blast as their sole source of damage.
They're not wrong.
But anyways, my character concept for this particular character was someone who comes from a dark, shadowy realm and doesn't like bright lights. Thus, one of the ideas I had for her is that she wasn't going to use any spells that make bright lights. So no Eldritch Blast.
Okay.
Just
So that's definitely interesting as a warlock concept.
I mean, it can be done, but I'm not saying you're wrong. But
the other is this.
It's definitely going to be more challenging.
Yeah. The other is this ability that, on paper, is equivalent to Eldritch Blast. It's just that Eldritch Blast becomes a lot more powerful later because you stack feats to let it do a whole bunch of bullshit for no mana cost.
Yeah, I mean, you made a pact with a creature, it being Fey, a fiend,
demonic, or yeah.
Well,
yeah, I mean,
on paper, though, the two options are theoretically equivalent. One of them conjures like a ghostly hand to scratch at your enemy, and the other one is you shoot them with a magic ray. Which on paper they're equivalent. It's just that one of them doesn't have any feats that support it later on. Apparently, this is one of those things that I didn't actually know prior to playing the character because I didn't have much experience with 5e. And honestly, I still don't
have much experience.
Hold on. Was this your first time playing 5e?
Technically, second
time. Whose idea was it to play a warlock? This actually does irritate me. This is one of my Whose idea was it?
I just wanted to play a magic user character, and of the
warlock is what they set you up with.
No, I picked Warlock.
Okay.
I didn't actually research options. I played a Warlock in the Neverwinter MMO, and that was actually the reason why I wanted to play a Warlock. Because I liked the way the character played in the MMO, which is obviously completely different than 5e.
It just irks me when you get you're new at a table and the DM shoves a character at you, says, well, why don't you play this? It's barely what you want. It's I've seen it done. It's been done to me. And
in my case, people are like, what is wrong with you? Why are you not using Eldritch Blast?
I mean, that's kind of what I'm wondering, but that's beside.
You know what? You know what you tell those people? Stay in your lane. Don't worry about what I'm doing. Stay in your lane.
If your lane gets me killed, I know who I'm going to blame.
So thinking about characters and players, and their attachment to characters, some players, they couldn't care less about the character. They're in it for the battle. They're in it for just the murder hoboing. Like, okay, that's fine. Board gaming it is that or hex crawl, point crawl, dungeon crawl. That's fine. We can play that. But What about having a plan for a single character development as a session or a subplot? Do you ever try to come up with like individual character arcs for them to explore, and for that one player to explore, not necessarily as a solo mission, but as a, hey, we're going to focus on this one character for this session or a few sessions. They're going to be the main star of it, but the supporting
You mean like a
cast
Jordan
needs
LaForge
to
episode?
support. In a way, yes, but more in the fact that they might be the front star of that session, but the supporting cast is just as important. They need the help from their support of their team to succeed at the mission, but the mission is about them to an extent, or about them gaining new abilities or gaining fame or even weapons. Do you ever do something like this? I'm going to start with crafting on this one.
Yes and no. I usually, if I'm going to have someone be the star of the show, I usually do it in a manner where the others get to shine. Like kind of like what you're saying, where the others are like, well, they're still there. In this instance, it's without the others, he wouldn't have succeeded. So they're not completely out of it as being stars, but they aren't the well, come to find out your grandfather left you this haunted mansion type thing.
Okay.
Like
So do you ever ask players specifically, hey, I'm wanting to do something with your character, a little more in depth with your character. Is there any aspirations or goals that they have? Do you ever ask those kinds of questions?
When the character is first created, because I love when players have goals.
Okay. What if, and I'm kind of breaking my episode guide here a little bit, but what if the player changes their mind about what their goal is, and you don't touch base with them? Like, how are you going to know if you don't ask them occasionally?
I hadn't considered that. Most of the time, I had very vocal players, so if they wanted to change something, it was, well, this is now my goal. It's like, well, what happened to your original goal? This sounds more fun. And unfortunately, I was very, well, it's not like I'm going to say, well, you can't change your goal, but I was a very player obedient for a while. So when they did strange things, I kind of let it happen. So like excellent example, one guy, his goal was to help a bunch of people reclaim their culture because he was blast forward from the past. That quickly turned into creating basically a shogun empire in the modern era. It's like those two don't even come anywhere near each other. Like, how does that correlate? But instead of at least questioning it, I just let him get away with it. That was totally off subject. I'm sorry.
What about you, Conall? Do you ever touch base with your players to figure out what their goals are and make sessions dedicated to them exploring or attaining, even in a small degree, their goal?
I with the shop games, no. I can't always count on little Timmy showing up, every time I have a game. I try to cater things to be more, put them a little bit in the spotlight. But I normally don't ask so much what's their plan, and especially if it's a one-shot campaign or not very long. Now, when it comes to larger campaigns, as Shadow said, your 6-year plus campaigns, then I do take time and talk to the players before the game starts, seeing what everybody wants to do, what's their idea. It's like I said with Finn, he's playing a dwarf and he wants to find his lost kingdom. So I might not have a whole session about him, but putting the Arkenstone into a treasure in a mountain, is starting to lead in that general direction. And I'll have other small things for the other players as it comes along. But other than that, I just basically let the players, other than completing the goal, because I am running a module railroad, there's only so many, stops we can make with it completely going off the track.
Sure. Back to Mar. How about how do you feel on this?
Well, a lot
Yeah,
of times there's just so it's a matter of degree, I guess is the best way to put it. If a player is, say a fighter who uses swords a lot, and he's still using the same sword he got at the beginning, and the other players have cool toys now. Might just throw something in, just like specifically so that he would like to have. Like, hey, maybe it's a sword that lets you burn enemies by touching them with it or something. It's it's like one of those things. It's like to go with the Hobbit example, it's like like the players are rummaging around in the mound of shiny stuff that Smaug accumulated, and you can come up with pretty easy ways to justify putting pretty much anything into that heap of stuff. So it's like you don't necessarily need to use the stuff that was in the pre-made adventure plan that you're using. You can just like make up stuff to give the players as loot if you really want to. Actually making a character an integral part of the story is a maybe. It all depends on what the story is. Does it make sense? Like, for example, it's like one of the Hyperborea games I was playing in. My character's an Eskimo. We go to a region that has Eskimo in it. So my character ends up being the one that talks to all of the Eskimo because my character speaks the language and is an Eskimo. She's not from this village. She's from a village that doesn't even worship the same deity, but she's more like them than the rest of the party is.
Okay. What about you, Shadow? Do you ever run like missions that are mainly meant for one character, but support the rest of the cast?
That's a privilege that must be earned, in my opinion. If the players are just trotting along and doing their thing, and nobody's standing out, nobody's trying to do anything other than, for the most part, the expected. Nah, if they want to branch out and show me that their character's more than just a two-dimensional, paper sheeted character, then absolutely. And I'll use that to entice the other players. Look what player A is doing outside the box, and look what they're getting for doing so. Maybe you might want to speak up a little more, do a little bit more, things in the story to warrant such a story. A player can die, or excuse me, a character can die. Players can die too, which is a tragedy, but not always. But if the player earns that special place in the story, cool, and they still may die, but they could go on to then become a ghost because of unfinished business. But if they've shown that there's something more to this character, and go out and do some things that warrant a Geordie LaForge episode, awesome. But
weren't those episodes you skipped?
Really, they really have to earn it and show that they're in it for more than just the next door to bash down, monster to slay, treasure chest to pop open, rinse and repeat. If they start getting attached to the character, they'll do those things. But in a lot of the games that I play, there's a good chance that they're never going to get there, and they may kind of wait until their 4th to 7th level, sort of that sweet spot in certain games where now they will probably survive most of the encounters, so they can start thinking about more than just staying alive and what are their goals and hopes and dreams for when they retire, or what they would like to do besides just be the stereotypical fighter, thief, magic user, or cleric.
So for me, when I'm running a homebrew game, not like a module game, sometimes module games, but most times it's homebrew. At the beginning of the game, I ask for everyone's character's aspiration, their goal. Like, what do you hope to achieve by the end of a 2, 3, 4 year game? Like, what is your goal? And then when they tell me, I'm like, okay, I note it down and I kind of make a path towards that goal. I'm like, what do I have to know? What does this character have to go through to get to this goal? Like, I want to be I want to be the archmage of a realm. Okay, so what do you have to do to become the archmage of the realm? You have to get results. You have to pass these trials. You have to, know the right people. You've got to do the right things. So I will, like I said, I'll make a roadmap for each individual character on what they have to do to achieve those goals. And I will plan sessions around those roadmap or around that roadmap. It's not going to be just one character. It might be two characters that are shining in that session, but that session is part of their roadmap to their goal, especially for the more longer run campaigns. And Conall's aware of this because I've done it in games where he's been at. It's like, hey, what's your goal? And he's like, well, this is my goal. I'm like, okay, this is the roadmap to get there. I don't share with them the exact roadmap. I kind of put forth the ideas and kind of drop hints or clues about certain things I know that the player wants for their character, and they are willing to go seek those out. I don't have to say, here, do this. I have to say, hey, along this path, you find something interesting. You find like this clue to, your roadmap. And, not in those exact words. And then they're like, hey, guys, we need to go that direction real quick. I know, like, we need to be in the next town in like 3 days. This will take maybe a few hours. Can we please go this direction? I need to check this out. And then that gets the player not just interested in the game, it gets them interested in, their character as well as trying to achieve their goal, their final goal. They're putting the puzzle pieces together in maybe not necessarily the right order, but they're getting all the puzzle pieces so that they can achieve their end game goals. And actually, this guy right here, Scott Clark, he is pretty much a grand master of this for the players at his table, because I've had the luxury and honor of being at his table. And I have had many characters that were way over the top, and he has not only obliged my over the top characters, he has made like mini arcs for that character. And when he asks like, hey, what do you see your character doing, whatnot, and I explain, like, well, this is where I'm my headspace, this is where I think I was wanting to go, and he actually kind of makes stuff up to get that direction, or at least present that path to me. And he does that for not just my character or for my over the top character. He does that for all of the characters, even some of the NPCs. And we have fun even helping the NPCs achieve those goals, because we're furthering not just our story, their story, but the entire story. It's quite masterful how he does this. And he's going to probably say, I just make stuff up as I go, which may be true, but he's still a grand master at it. So let's see here. Other things that I know players like to have, like as far as their own personal subplots, are things like romance, intrigue, stories of vengeance, stories of seeking out like the Ark of the Covenant, or even the like becoming the esquire to the god of their people, ruling over people. These are all goals that characters might have, and they can be subplot items to keep those specific players interested and coming back every single week, or even sometimes every single day, if you're playing that much, which if you are, my hat's off to you, because holy crap.
Right.
I can't even get a game together, once a month. So anyway, let's see. The only thing, goals don't leave others behind. Yes. They aren't just supporting cast members. They are part of the main cast, and you should also highlight them. Pick 2-3 characters, and like the arc is driven towards them, but the other characters also get something out of it. You deserve the praise, my friend. Seat of my pants a lot. It's the only way to keep up with. Yes, we are very chaotic, I'll admit. So, getting back to topic, because that doesn't ever
I
happen.
kind of want to say I'd be there at your game once a month or once a week. If you could get like 4 other people.
I know, right? How's that guy? There's somebody on YouTube. What was it? I can't remember how it goes now. But anyway, it's like counting stars. But lately, I've been playing D&D, or at least I would be if my friends were free. I find that often. So let's see here. So getting back onto my notes here. So I'm breaking from the like soloist mentality for players and their characters. I'm going now into the player who, if you ever have the scenario, go ahead and spout out on it. But if you have the following scenario where a player looks to be completely disinterested in anything but maybe combat or combat and treats the game more like a board game than a role-playing game. If you have that scenario, do you ever placate this style or method of play, or do you make attempts to change that player's perspective of the game? So for this one, I'm going to start with Conall. Do you ever have players who it's just a board game to them? Like it's just about rolling dice?
One or two, out of a table of, let's say, 6 to 7, I might have 1 or 2 or this there just want to relieve stream and treat it as how should I put this? Not so much murder hobo. I mean, that's kind of what they're doing, but they're not. They're just there to have some fun. And they're not hooked into the plot. They don't want kids. They don't want to be married to the princess. They're there to roll some dice and relieve some stress. And I don't fault them for that. I'm like, as long as they don't take away from the game, as long as they're happy in the position that they are, and they're not razzing other people or belittling other people about wanting to RPG and do their turns and move on to the next person, I personally don't have a problem with it. This game takes all kinds. This hobby takes all kinds of people. And if he wants to be, I guess the best term for a weekend dice warrior, then I'm not going to stop him from having a good time. If they want to say, well, I want to get a little bit more out of the game, then we'll have a conversation. But until then, I just kind of look at the person, have him do his thing, then move on to the next person.
Okay. Well, what about you, Crafting? Do you ever have players who are just so disinterested in anything that is not combat? And how do you keep those players engaged at the table?
I did have a couple hold on a second. Sorry, allergies.
No,
I did have a couple. I spent, I think I might have said this before, but I spent most of my gaming time with one primary group and a lot of little groups. A couple of those groups had guys that weren't that interested. What I found is a good way to keep them at least semi-interested, at least them focused enough to notice things, was something I like to do now anyway, to keep characters on edge, is make them roll for initiative, or their character automatically react with their sword pulled out because some sort of feel like something come up behind them real fast, or something leaped out of the corner at them. It at the time anyway kept their interest, because at the very least they felt like they didn't know when they were going to be attacked. Of course, you can't do that too much, otherwise, well, I'm never going to be attacked. But it worked to a degree.
Okay.
So that I do now that I'm an adult, I consider that a gimmick, not a real tactic.
I mean, it's a valid tactic. I'll give you that. Like if players are just so disinterested in what's going on, suddenly you tell them your character draws your sword as a familiar or dangerous presence fills them with dread. Like that. That is a great attention grabber. And I wouldn't necessarily. I mean, yes, it might be called a gimmick, but if it works, it works. If it works, don't fix it. So, what about you, Shadow? Do you ever have players at your table that are just completely closed to role playing and just want to focus on dice and mechanics?
I have in the past, and to remedy that, I will just brutalize them in combat. Every combat, they will end up with 1 hit point or less at the end of the battle. I will push them to the point where they will have to start thinking about other things besides just I need the cleric to heal me and I'm going to swing my sword. No, well, the cleric's out of spells. You need to start thinking, with something besides your fists, so to speak. And just you hit them as hard as I can, and I'll role play the crap out of it, with the the descriptions of the actual combat, telling them how they're getting hit and how the enemy is swinging and things like that to get them to start, getting more involved instead of just roll my die, I hit. No, well, this guy, he smashed your shield. He, not only did he, hit you, but a buckle on your chest plate is now shattered, and your armor's in danger of, your chest plate, is going to fall off if he hits the other buckle. Draw them more into the role-playing aspect of the combat, describing it, so that they start getting those gears oiled up and working and thinking more about, if that's all they want is combat, well, I'm going to give them the best combat, the most challenging combat they've ever had. And maybe they'll start thinking about maybe rushing into every single encounter, sword drawn, battle cry on their lips isn't the absolute end all be all of that character.
Okay. What about you, Mar? Do you ever have players who are just so focused on combat and how their character interacts with just the mechanical side of things? Do you ever try to dissuade them or offer them other options?
Remember how I was talking about a funny story that happened yesterday earlier?
Yes.
Well, it's a lot like what Shadow was talking about. Me and my family recently decided to start playing Star Trek Adventures for family game night. Did the first session where we actually played the game last night. And my group ended up getting split 2 ways. Because the scenario is, you have 7 people in a shuttlecraft that crashes on a planet that's barely populated and stuff happens. Well, we decided to have 5 members of the group go to the Federation Science Outpost to try and figure out what's going on with the Science Outpost. And 2 people stay behind at the shuttlecraft. Well, one of the people who stayed behind the shuttlecraft kept tinkering with everything he could possibly think of to tinker with. One of which was to actually send a subspace distress signal that, hey, that worked. People are going to be here in 2 days. Good luck surviving until then. But it's like he kept just messing with stuff. And my nephew, who was his son, decided that he was going to stop being part of the party that went to the research station and walk back to the shuttlecraft alone. Which is one of those things where, you do realize that's stupid, right? Because his entire reason for wanting to do that is because he wanted to just push random buttons inside the shuttlecraft, even though we told him most of the buttons are broken and the shuttlecraft is on reserve power because it's broken. So my other brother, the actual GM for this one, decided to have him get ambushed by native wildlife because he wandered off into the woods alone. He doesn't
Makes
get
sense.
killed. However, his father's character. Wait, no, actually, no. This was my sister. Never mind. Well,
Anyway.
okay. But what happened with that, though, is that his character ends up unconscious, strapped to one of the seats in the shuttlecraft, because the player playing the character did stupid things.
Okay. So how else would they be dissuaded into actions that are solely focused on mechanics of gameplay, or like just pushing random buttons till they do something? Like how else can you dissuade them from those kinds of actions and actually engaging in what's going on?
Well, with this particular one, the key issue was that the people in the shuttlecraft were basically waiting for the rest of the party to do stuff. And why on earth my nephew decided to switch from investigating the science that they should to going to the shuttlecraft, I have no idea. But yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. This is one of those things where it was a scenario that's kind of weird, because you have a legit reason to split the party. You just don't really have anything for the people at the shuttlecraft to actually do for most of the thing. Although, to be honest, we didn't actually get very far into the adventure, because we kept having weird discussions about, no, you can't actually make the shuttlecraft fly to the science station. It's broken. It crash landed. And doing that discussion multiple times. Oh, well.
I can see how that would be, a nuisance.
Hey, Rick. Hey, Sean.
As far
What's up,
as
guys?
welcome to the show, guys. So as far as if I've got players who are just interested in purely mechanics, I will placate them for the first few games, the first few sessions of it. I'll placate them, be like, okay, yeah, I'll give you the combats and whatnot. But at Tribunal, I'm going to be saying, hey, I've noticed your character's really combat heavy. Is this the direction you're wanting to go? When we talked about goals and whatnot, at the beginning, or the session 0, like when we talked about goals, you said your goal was X, and everything you're doing right now is pushing you further away from that goal, because all you want to seem to be doing is rolling dice and bleeding numbers from other things. Like you're trying to make other things numbers less than yours constantly. Is that goal still something you want to be doing or going for, or have you changed your goal? And if a player comes to my table and they don't have a goal for their character, I'm going to ask, what are you wanting to gain out of this game? Like, why are you wanting to show up every week? If your character doesn't have an end goal and they're just here to make things bleed, I'm probably going to say, hey, this is probably not the game for you. The groups I tend to run are a little more role play heavy. They're going to be getting into dynamics of state. They're going to be getting into diplomacy and other aspects of the role playing, where dice are not necessarily going to decide the fate of where things go, but your words and your actions will probably carry more weight than dice rolls. And if the player decides, hey, this is not for me, awesome. If they decide, no, I'm going to stick this out and I'm going to, continue rolling dice and hopefully making numbers, on my side greater and less on the other side, then I will typically try to put goals in there, or I'll still have their goal and the roadmap to their goal, built into the game, and I'm going to keep track of where they are with it. And every few months, if they're further away from the goal because they decided to go left instead of right at their deciding moment, then, I'm going to be like, hey, you're getting further and further away from your character's goal. is this something that you are still wanting to do? And so for me, it's just keep an open dialogue with my players. So, let's see here. Has anyone not answered the disinterested player? Okay. Go ahead.
No, I'm just thinking about what you're saying, and it's like, what if I wanted to make it, depending on what era your campaign is in, depends on the statement I'm going to make. Let's say it is in the Renaissance era. I want to be known as the most deadliest swordman alive. That's a thing. That was very much a thing.
Sure.
And unfortunately, that goes with I need to bleed some hit points. But
absolutely. But I'm going to challenge you in this way. If your character wants to be the deadliest sword, known as the deadliest sword master ever alive, then they are going to be faced with deadly challenges, one-on-one challenges, often.
And rightfully so. With if I'm playing a gunslinger,
I'm not going to pull punches.
Right. Yeah, I don't expect you to. If I'm being a gunslinger, I'm expecting, to be shot at by, somebody else trying to make their name. Or if you're doing Iron Kingdom's gun race, it's just, there's never a no. I'm trying to find a way where there's never a no. There's just a yes and. Okay, you want to do this, but this is the kind of campaign I'm running. How can I make the two work? Because
lots of no's. Lots of no's.
There should be no's in some areas, but there should be no.
I understand where you're coming from. The concept of saying yes and or yes no but that is making waves right now in the hobby as a whole. I mean, it's always kind of been there though. The whole yes but or yes and or
I'm
no
not
but.
going to give you a holy avenger.
The thing is, he really shouldn't be asking the questions.
But it'd be like, I'm not giving you a holy avenger.
You don't know the answer. You're not going to get an answer from the cosmos saying, yes, you can jump this. The answer is,
well, it's not always like
you try.
It's not always like that. It's like, you like playing paladins. No, I'm not going to give you a holy avenger. I will give you a weapon that has holy put on it.
No, I was referring to the asking of questions and getting an answer. The answer should be either flat out no, because you won't know until you try. I'm not going to tell you can do something. You are going to tell me what you do, and then I will tell you what die to roll to see if you accomplish it. Not that you can, yes, you can do it. You tell me you're going to do something, then we'll go from there.
Well, from the Star Trek Adventures game, one of the things that I personally see as a problem, although my brother, who's the actual GM, didn't really see as a problem, is that having the players define who their character is with a single sentence summary. Most of them can't do that because they didn't actually think out who the character is as a character. Which again goes with that thing that you were saying earlier about, trying to play the character as if it's a tabletop minis game and not a role playing game.
No, I've had many players at my table who were solely focused on mechanics. As a matter of fact, I had one player who, this was in Pathfinder 1, he had, I don't know if he came up with it on his own or if he went and sought out an internet designed character, but he was a rogue character or a thief type character, and he had built the character in such a way by level 5 that he didn't need anyone else to acquire sneak attack on a target. All he needed was a wall. That's right. He was flanking with a wall, and he wasn't role playing the character. He was rolling dice. He was a human dice roller and human or dice decision maker. And, I'm not going to fault him for wanting to play board game-esque or dungeon crawl-esque games. Like, that's the way I presented the module that I was running. Because I was running a Pathfinder module. It presented very much like a dungeon crawl at the very beginning. And I can't really fault him for what he did.
What module?
But I don't have that player at my table because it's not the first time I've seen them do that. So I don't really invite that player anymore because that's the type of play that I'm not looking for.
Well, I mean that's kind of sort of goes back to
I need to go check out something. I'll be right back.
Yep.
Okay. Well, one thing about the Star Trek Adventures thing that I personally found to be highly amusing, because of the fact that my nephew was so deeply into the I want to just kill things mentality, he didn't actually bother filling out his entire character sheet, which meant, well, see, because Star Trek Adventures goes through a life path character creation system, which sets a lot of your stats based on your background and life choices prior to becoming a Starfleet officer. And he didn't actually bother with all of the life path. So his character actually has terrible stats that are brokenly low because he didn't bother finishing the character creation process. And the screwball part is that he actually wrote the stats on the sheet of paper like that and didn't stop to think about the fact that these are not the way it's supposed to work.
I often find games like D&D 3.5 or even Pathfinder 1E to focus less on who the character is rather than what can the character do. Having played Traveler with Shadow running the game for Table Breakers, I actually got to experience a game that was more about who is your character, what have they spent their life doing, and that was such a unique change of pace. Like, I had never played Traveler before. That was my actual first Traveler game. I'd read about Traveler but never experienced it, and I actually liked that change of pace quite well. As a matter of fact, in just 2 weeks, I'm going to Gen Con, and I tried to get into like 5 different RPG games that I have never played before. Like, I have never played West End Games Star Wars. I've never played Palladium or Earth Dawn or I can't remember what the other ones. Avatar, the new Avatar game. So that's what I signed up for. Like, I signed up to get into these games because I want to experience those games. I know it's a con. I know it's going to be a completely different setting than than a homebrewed table. I understand that, but I want to have a chance at the experience of playing those games with complete strangers, just to see what it's like.
Well, one of the interesting things I was getting at earlier, though, is that the way that the Star Trek Adventures life path character creation thing works, it kind of holds your hand and walks you through the process of thinking out your character's backstory. Because I mean,
that's kind of what Traveler does too.
It's probably the same approximate concept. But I mean, like with Star Trek Adventures, like you start with, okay, what species is your character? What planet did your character grow up on? Was it your species' homeworld? Was it a far-flung colony world? And so on and so forth. And then after you do, like, I think there's like 8 stages or something in that, then you're done creating the character, and you have your stats and all that stuff.
So let's get into some of my other questions or kind of sidebar questions for the evening. Do you ever, and this is all within the maintaining your players and keeping them interested in the table, do you ever make a nemesis, be it a faction or an individual or even like a force or a power within the world that indirectly or directly opposes the player characters, and it doesn't have to be all of them. It could just be one of them. Do you ever make a nemesis? I'm going to start with Conall on this one.
Yes, I do, and sometimes I'll find a way to make the nemesis actually the member of the party that's in it, especially if they make decisions that involve making pacts with evil creatures.
Okay.
With the nemesis, towards the whole party, I try to keep things balanced. But if I could put someone on their ear that helps the evil, it makes the game a little bit more interesting. How they're going to handle this? When are they going to tell the party? Do they tell the party? And being a warlock, that you have all the powers in the universe, but it comes with a price. You sign a contract, and if you decide to do that, all right, well, here's what's going to cost.
Remind me to never let Conall play a shifter.
Oh, I've played a shifter before. I'm playing a shifter now.
Hey, crafting.
I mean, Hidden Dog's policy on shifter is no.
Crafting.
Yeah.
Hey, crafting. Don't let Conall play a shifter.
What did
So
I
what about
do?
you, Crafting? Do you ever Crafting? Do you ever make nemesis for your players, like a specific player or group of players?
I try. I say try because I probably would now, but I didn't back when I was younger. Didn't try to let them do the whole cartoon bad guy. I can escape no matter what. And my players were brutal. So there was a nemesis until the end of the adventure, and then paste.
The unspoken nemesis.
I
Yeah.
like to think of them as Team Rocket.
I mean, if you're going with the Team Rocket approach, plot convenient, I'm not here anymore, as a way for the nemesis to escape what would otherwise be certain death is certainly the norm, not the exception.
Yeah. Henry says GMs don't make nemesis, player characters make nemesis. Yeah, that is a method of it, especially if you peeve off like one, I don't know, cabbage farmer, by knocking his cabbages into a gorge every few episodes.
Chicken farmers.
Yes. How about you, Shadow? Do you ever make a single nemesis or a group of nemesis for one or more players? You are muted, sir. You're muted.
Hell
There you
yeah.
go.
That's one of the greatest joys of being a dungeon master is throwing up something tailor-made for that smart-ass player or even that excellent player who deserves to actually get someone to arch them. Yes, arch them. You get to pull out all your best tropes, all your best voices, all your best strategies, all that. Nothing is more scary than that nemesis that is constantly thinking morning, noon, and night about the destruction of that player, and the fear it instills is even better. And for those of you, worried about the nemesis being defeated too easily, in the old days, all you would have need to do is give them a simple ring of teleportation, and as soon as things are starting to look grim, gone, out of there. That's simple. There was the old contingency spell where if they are reduced to X number of hit points or some other thing happens to them, another spell goes off that cannot be stopped. And it's, of course, teleport. Greatest power, greatest superpower out there, teleport.
Until your party kills that person and takes the ring.
That's
Yeah,
keyed only to
and then
that's keyed only to them. Yeah, so they got a nice ring that doesn't work.
Yeah, basically like a get out of jail free enchantments. Like you get injured, the enchantment triggers, and poof, you're not here anymore.
well, what about you, Mar? Do you ever make just a nemesis or a group of individuals dedicated to ruining the player's plans?
See, writing characters who exist just to annoy the player is fun. Making them recurring characters is also fun. Making them the focus of the story, I don't really like doing that because of the fact that now the story is about the nemesis and you're not really doing much else. But I mean, it's like it can be very interesting having characters that exist in the story just to see if what the players are actually going to do about it. Like one of the Star Trek stories I wrote, I put in this character who is a Borg Vorta, who has an extremely abrasive, grating personality, who basically tells you to don't touch my stuff. If you try to touch my stuff, I'm going to kill you. If the player actually touches her stuff, she really will try to kill you. It's just one of those things. It's like, are the players actually going to do it or not? Because of the fact that if you don't touch her stuff, she'll just leave you alone. And I had her as a recurring character because of the fact that for that story, she was actually one of the local. Well, she was the closest thing that particular outpost had to a security chief. So by pissing her off, you're pissing off the local security force.
That's something you want to do, especially in Star Trek. For me, when it comes to engaging players with direct opposition, and for me, it is direct opposition. Whether or not it starts as direct opposition is up for, the whim that I'm going for. But when I develop the character paths, the goal paths or roadmap, one of the obstacles I put in the way for said roadmap is, well, other enemies or characters that they are going to have to either interact with or circumnavigate. They could be direct opponents or opponents going for the same goal when there can only be one. Insert Highlander joke here. But if
I bit my tongue.
Hey, the jokes make themselves. But if my players are going for certain goals, and again, this is predicated on the idea that your players have some kind of path that they are wanting to travel, some kind of goal or object that they're trying to get to. The nemesis kind of appear along that road. They could, like I said, they could be a staunch rival going for the same thing. They could be a rival power saying, no, if you become X, then the world is doomed and we must stop you. It could flip the whole villain trope on its head and be like, no, you're acting like the villain and we are the heroes trying to stop you. So your nemesis doesn't have to necessarily be evil. They could actually be a good guy trying to stop the players from ending the world. Yes, Shadow.
And let's not forget everybody's favorite mirror of opposition.
Yes. Yep.
Built
The hero
in
of opposition. Yep.
Right there, the whole party now has their own personal arch enemy, and oh my God, the campaign you could make with the hijinks that could ensue from that alone.
It's not so much as Gon, had to deal with the mirrors on more than one occasion. I don't really consider them as a rival, more as a tool that the main bad is using against you. Because they're not living and breathing things. They don't think for themselves. Once you break the mirror or kill them, they go away. A rival...
It's basically a super mook, not an actual character in its own right.
Right.
Why?
Why
not?
Why
not twist that mirror into your own design?
I mean, you could where it would make a simulacrum of the thing that passes in front of it, and that simulacrum is as
Clone or
alive,
pulling
but opposite. Yep.
Or clone or pulling it from an alternate dimension, even scarier.
I've played with
Yeah,
alternate dimensions. They're fun. But no, so I would say having a nemesis, or a faction, or even a godly power, little g, doesn't have to be a big G, it could be a little g god. Having a direct opposing or indirect opposing force against the players, can keep their interest in the table for longer campaigns, especially if you increment it out. Like, they keep running into the low level peons or mooks until such a point where they have to fight one of the big bosses, and make multiple tiers of bosses that for them to meet or interact with. And tie it deeply to not just their story, their individual goal, but also the goal of the game itself. And this will keep your players, interested in the game, because now their character is intimately tied to the story and their goal at the same time, and that they have to fight against the forces that are arrayed against them, and it becomes a race to see, or a competition to see, who can do the thing first.
Well, that's actually one of the things that's kind of an interesting thing. It's like, when the players don't know what's going on in the world around them, when they're trying to figure it out, introducing a different group that's maybe possibly also trying to figure things out complicates their effort to figure things out, because you have this other guy over here who's doing something. What's he doing? Is he doing something that's you don't want him to do, or something else? And you don't, and as the players have to figure that out too, and maybe just fight them to make them go away, which, yeah, some players are definitely murder hobo enough that a fellow adventuring party that's actually has the same end goal, they would just kill them because they're there.
Yeah, it's on the board, it needs to die, right? Well, I mean, considering how to go about setting up rivals or even nemesis, groups or factions, you may not be presenting it as a combat challenge. It might be a role play challenge where they have to navigate with words instead of actions. Those ones are I think the ones that a lot of, especially younger players, struggle the most with, especially the more murder hobo-esque players. They struggle with those kind of interactions because it's not as mechanically driven.
That reminds me. I mentioned that example with the Borg Vorta character in the Star Trek setting earlier. Care to guess what the overall premise of that mission was, and what the context was for meeting this individual?
I don't know if I have enough contextual information to wager a guess.
Well, okay. It's a trade
I know there's the
negotiation.
security. Oh, okay. I was going to say, I know there's security, but beyond that,
you get the players for this story are being sent by the Klingon High Council to do trade negotiations with the Dominion. Pissing off the local authorities is like one of the worst things you would possibly do, in the sense of actually conducting trade negotiations.
Okay.
Hey,
there's a Bruce Lombardo.
I personally shoot anybody that wants to make trading agreements with the Dominion, but that's just me.
Anyone else have anything to say upon Nemesis, and keeping your players engaged with them?
A, it was a horrible Star Trek movie, and B, I think any way you can bring something to the table that the players don't expect, it being a nemesis or a jaded husband or whatever, because the players being whoever the players are, will make things a little bit more interesting. There's a warrant for the rest of your bard. Why is there a warrant for the rest of the bard? Because he was singing a lewd song and the magistrate did not approve of it. Whatever. It'll bring the people's interest back to the table. It's like, wait, who has a warrant for the rest? Who did you sleep with? I didn't sleep with anybody. It's just, it brings, like I said, it brings the attention back to the table. And sometimes, if you do it right, you can get 3 or 4 sessions out of it that basically writes itself.
I mean, honestly, a good plot twist does that sort of thing in general. I mean, it's like okay, your example was one of the party finds out that there's a warrant for the arrest of one of the party members, but I mean, there's all kinds of other plot twists you can do that are appropriate to whatever story to have the players sit up and like, hey, look at this thing that's here that you need to pay attention to now.
I would also like to add, do it a lot. The more paranoid your players are, the more engaged your players are, the more they're going to be thinking. At any minute, something could be busting down the doors with their head, as the goal. If your players are constantly worried about something when they're outside of the dungeon, if they're constantly worried that at any moment this bad guy can show up, you're going to get much more fun, much more excitement, and much more tension, which is something that the players need to feel at almost all times. Otherwise, you've got kind of a long, drawn-out, boring story.
Something else to add, that I can add is, don't do it constantly, but don't be afraid to make the reason why they have a nemesis kind of random. Like, he's a nut scientist, or someone in grief blames them for coming through and killing the wrong person, or, well, that isn't random, but blaming them for something that they technically didn't do, but they were there at the area. Like, there can be 1,000 reasons why someone chooses them to be their nemesis. You don't want to make it random constantly, but don't be afraid to make it random every once in a while.
Well, I mean, what I would do is like, there is a logic to why the character is connected, but it's not necessarily a logic that's player facing. Because, it's like, there's this one thing I read years ago about writing stories is that, the big bad in a story always has some connection to the hero. That connection, however, might be that the bad guy stepped on the hero's dog 2 years ago, and the hero's upset because of that. But
no John Wick.
There is a connection, even if it's something that's kind of like flimsy pretext.
You want a John Wick? That's how we get a John Wick.
Yeah. Anyway, I just picked up something off the top of my head that something that could be like accidental from the perspective of the bad guy.
Equilibrium is the reason why we got John Wick.
Oh wait, here's another example. The Street Fighter movie.
Do we have to?
That famous quote from Bison when Chun-Li is giving her little spiel about how she sees him killing him as her life's goal or something like that, and he's like, "Who are you? Oh, I trashed your village years ago. Which village was that? I did so many of them." Yeah, but it's just like one of the things that to Chun-Li, it really was the most significant event that had happened in her entire life, and to Bison, it was Tuesday.
He really was the best part of that movie.
So beyond just Nemesis, other things you can keep your players engaged in the game or story is props. If you have props that, and Conall, you touched on this earlier, like miniatures and a map are great props. but having a handout for the players, having like a scroll of written text for them that gives them the clue or the beginning of the story that they need to figure out and sort out. And you open up the story and you hand them the scroll, like with a seal or something. It could be a sticker for all pretense, but they break the seal and suddenly they're swept up into this story around where the scroll came from and what it says. That's something I have actually done with other groups. Is I would take like parchment paper and I would coffee stain it and write on it, and then put it set it out on the table for the players to notice before they even arrive. And they're like, "Hey, what's up with the scroll?" I'm like, "I don't know. You gonna investigate it?" And they just kind of look at me like, "Are you joking?" I'm like, "No, go for it." If it's on the table, it's in play. And the players got a kick out of it because they looked into the scroll, and one of the things I had done is I'd taken whole milk and written on the backside of the scroll that could only be revealed by light or heat a hidden message within it. But I alluded to that within the actual text of the scroll until one of the players, who was a smoker, was like, "Hey, do you mind if I light up my lighter in here?" I'm like, "Oh, go for it." And he lit it up and took it to the back side of the paper, and he's like, "Guys, there's a message like inlaid into the paper," and it got everyone at the table engaged with the object and where they were supposed to go. Because what I had actually done was not just a hidden message on the back, but it was actually a map to another location in the game map.
Lemon juice works good too.
Yes, yeah, lemon juice does work good too.
I used to, when I was running my top secret campaign back in the day, I would go through things like People magazine and cut out photographs and use them to assemble dossiers for the missions. I found this great one with an article about a plane crash. So I had all these cool pictures of the wreckage of this plane, and that worked into a really good story. You'd be amazed what you can do with a little imagination and a little glue stick and some paper and even an old-fashioned typewriter back in the day, because that's all we had, and really suck your players into that particular thing. Now we've got the internet and computers and all kinds of fancy technology, but giving them something tactile to hold on to and look at and look for the clues, it can be a game changer.
That thing you said about writing a hidden message, I can't. I'm racking my brain trying to remember how it works, but there was something you can use, like writing on regular notebook paper, that even though it's not, like readily apparent reading it normally, if you hold it up to the light, it'll actually like make that section of the paper less transparent than the rest of the sheet of paper. So you'll just like see this shadowy outline of letters. I don't remember how it works though.
Lemon juice is one of the ones you can do that with, as Shadow mentioned. You can do it with milk. Anything that will leave a residue behind that when it dries is clear. You can kind of do that with. I liked using whole milk. That's what I had because I was trying to be conscious of calcium intake at one point in time, and then decided the stomach pain just wasn't worth it, and said to hell with it. So.
Oh, right.
Now I use lemon juice.
For some reason, I had the idea in my brain that using the lighter was the version where you warm up the paper and it causes the hidden ink to change colors.
That's the lemon juice.
I believe. Yeah, lemon juice does that. Whole milk can also do that. Well, go ahead.
If you hold it up to a light bulb, that's the way they used to do it in the actual spy gig. In Spy World, they would write with lemon juice on the back or even on the front of the page, and you'd hold it up to a light bulb, and the heat from the light bulb would activate it, and there you go.
Oh, I was thinking of something where it doesn't actually make it readable in the normal sense. It just like makes a, I guess you could say, watermark in the paper by writing on the paper.
Mhm. There are methods you can use to do that, but black light, as Nerdy points out here, to show it. Yeah, that's a great use. Give them notes on flash paper. Yeah, they light it on fire. Suddenly, it's gone. This message will self-destruct. But what other kinds of things can you do for your players to keep them interested in? They could be gimmicks, they could be other things for like longer running games, but what other things have you presented to your players that have really captured their interest that you can share with the audience?
I have one that's pretty dorky, but every Halloween I used to run a haunted house type game or a Caliban from Hardwin, one or the other depending on what I had done the year before, and I would make potions and other edible foods that I would literally hand out. It's Halloween to get into the spirit. I'd hand out potion bottles that were nickel nips. You guys remember those, the wax bottles?
Mm-hmm.
Different color, different potion, things like that. It's nerdy, but it for that particular night, that particular game session, and many others, that was kind of a big hit. I know, really nerdy.
Crap.
I got an example in hand.
Yeah. Awesome.
I had a player who
What
was
was
playing
that?
an orc, and I made him an orc cleaver.
Ah, okay.
Foam core, aluminum tape, and just some spray paint, and a little bit of
Nice.
well, the exact details doesn't matter.
For a second, I thought I was looking at a stencil for a maple leaf. I didn't know you were Canadian.
Oh, I accidentally made a maple leaf axe. Actually, it's sitting somewhere in the collection of stuff I have.
Nice. Weapon props are always an awesome thing. What about you, Conall? Anything that you like toss out to your players that for them to like kind of grasp hold of? It doesn't even have to be a physical thing, but like, is there anything you do for your players that really grabs their attention, holds it?
When I was living in the fine state of Missouri, I'm sorry, in Poplar Bluff.
Hey, I was born in the state of Missouri. Some say I never left.
The shop was more or less, how some game shops are just more or less great big magic shops, Magic the Gathering shop. This guy's main attraction was Warhammer. So he had Warhammer models, Warhammer everything. So if they're about ready to go forth into a castle or something, or fight whatever, I would make sure I laid out the map with all kinds of stuff from the Warhammer table, the scenery, and made it really pop, more so than just lined on a map. I'd put up walls, great big spiders when they're dealing with a drow that they don't have that type of spider, and it fake in D&D fig wise. So I wouldn't do like handouts, but I'd make sure the table popped where I could, and players seem to like that for the most part.
Yeah, terrain is
awesome.
If you're gonna do miniatures, the next step is terrain, and my son and I, we've been doing that for the entire history of the channel. If you can come up with some good scatter terrain or some good generic, multi-purpose terrain out there, you'd be amazed how quick you can, populate a game board with more than just, an overhead, downward looking view of your environment. It's definitely a next level step you can take beyond the dry erase board and just the miniatures.
All right, and Maro, how about you? What kind of things do you do to really grab your players' attention?
Well, one thing I like to do, which obviously I don't always have an opportunity to do, but when I do get the opportunity, find it to be quite interesting, is writing up backstories for major NPCs so that I don't have to explain the whole thing in an info dump in the middle of the game. I can just let the players read it and not actually, read it to them.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, some players just don't care, but it's
Yeah.
something that players who do pay attention to it might find to be highly useful later on.
Awesome. So, as far as keeping your players' attention, I hope we've given you guys out there on YouTube some ideas or potential thoughts on things you can implement at your own table. It doesn't stop just there. Like, there are so many ways and so many other great game masters out there who might also be able to offer ideas on this. If you aren't already a member of our Discord, you can find the link in our description below where you can pose questions in our discussion forums, or even pose questions directly to us, the Gatekeepers, and it could become a show topic. Otherwise, if you would like to post a comment in the comments section of this video as far as a question for a future topic, be happy to do so. As far as me, you'll see me tomorrow night over on Barron and Barron G Rock and Bruce Lombardo's channels for part 2 of my Final Fantasy themed ICRPG one shot for the Table Breakers. I'll also be streaming it here on my channel tomorrow. Mar, what have you got going on this week?
Well, Saturday we're probably going to be playing Path of Exile, that on the Legion of Myth channel, and mine streaming that evening. Don't really have anything else planned at the moment.
Okay, how about you, Crafting? What have you got going this week?
Well, I kind of have to repeat what I said last week, unfortunately, because I had bad audio when I tried to do my final thoughts video. And I didn't notice till Friday. But this week, I know for a fact I have good audio. I will be coming out with my final thoughts video to the first Robotech book.
Awesome. Shadow, how about you? What do you got going this week?
Well, right after I leave here tonight, I will be on 1-2 Radio with Raven McMinn, doing a radio broadcast, internet podcast, whatever you want to call it, on role-playing, theater of the mind, and their quantum connection to the paranormal, as in the real world, and how the two interests or fields of study or hobbies, if you will, connect with one another. I've noticed there are quite a few gamers out there in our little family that are actually quite knowledgeable about different aspects of the paranormal and how they sort of come together and complement each other. And Raven and I will be talking about that for an hour. Then Friday, I've got a game with Bo. Bo Paints Minis. If you haven't subbed to his channel, what are you doing with your life? Saturday night, I'll be doing the Sci-Fi Shadow Chat with the regular motley crew that I consort with. And after that, of course, I'll be going over to the Quantum Show with Nathan Allen. Sunday, over on Connell's channel, we will be discussing the movie Train to Busan, which was Mark of Mark Genre Mixer's pick for the Cigar DM's weekly movie review show. And then by then, the little guy should be home from Mexico. We'll be doing a bunch of new videos now that he'll be back in the studio with me. And we've got a whole lot of new stuff planned for August, so stay tuned.
And Connell, what are you doing?
Well, what can I say that hasn't already been said? I will be, in theory, this coming Friday, I will be either playing Warhammer Fantasy on camera or Starfinder, where I get to play a bear that has a uplifted bear. So those will be the two games. One of the two games I most likely will get to play. Then Saturday, you will find me hanging out with Bruce and the other Monty crew as we are dealing with fire giants. No, not ice giants. No, not storm giants. Yes, the ones that give you the rash and tickle the least of my fancy, fire giants. That's what we'll be doing on Saturday on Bruce's channel. Please come check us out. It's going to be probably an 8-hour stream, most likely, of just all kinds of what the fuck was I drinking. Then Sunday, as got pointed out, we'll be watching the train movie. I think it's a Asian zombie movie. I have yet to watch it as of yet. I'm looking forward to it. Maybe I might go bug Jay and bring over some plum sake, and we could both just watch it and be drunk and merry. What else is going on? That's about it. I mean, tomorrow, as you said, we're gonna meet. Me, you, and Shadow will be over hanging out with Bruce for the second part of your campaign. So I think everything is basically got covered.
Awesome. Well, I do hope that everyone out there in YouTube has enjoyed this evening. I enjoyed talking about this topic because keeping your players' interest is very important to long run games. And we'll be back next week with a new topic here on Gatekeepers. Have a great evening, everyone.
Happy trails.
Good night.